Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we will discuss the process management inside Linux kernel. So let's get started. This is the content that I will be discussing in this video. So we will discuss about process and threads. We will discuss about the life cycle of a process and ultimately how a process exists. We will also see the actual code inside the Linux kernel, how these things are implemented. And at the end, we will see the simple programs which illustrate the functioning of different system calls related to the processes. So what is a process? Process is a program that is currently executing in the system. And this program is associated with the different kind of uh, resources such as open files, pending signals, internal kernel data, processor state, memory state, and some global data. And threads of execution or threads are object of activity within a process. So threads are created by a process and they have individual program counter, process stack, and set of processor registers. They share the address space of a memory and many more resources. So a program itself is not a process, but it is an active program and related resources. These are the system calls related to the processes. So internally kernel calls a process as a task. So to describe a process, we have process descriptor and its type is task struct. And this task structure contains all the information required by kernel to manage a process. So task descriptor contains PID of that process, PID of the parent, open files, state of that process, address space, and pending signals, and many more informations. And in the right, you can see this is the pictorial view of task list. Task list contains the pointers of different process descriptors, and task list is a circular doubly linked list. So kernel can iterate through all the processes inside the system. So let's see how process descriptor is allocated in the kernel. It is allocated with the help of slab allocator. So slab allocator is consists of different kind of cache lines or caches. So it efficiently reuse the object code of different processes by caching them in the different caches, and when they are required it access them efficiently, so it makes the process management very efficient. We have another structure called struct thread info. So this contains the information related to the threads, and it is always stored at the bottom of the kernel stack of that process. So the question comes, why it is stored at the bottom of the kernel stack? So we will see the answer of this question in the next slide. So this is the structure of thread info. It contains one very most important thing is called task. So it represents the thread by which process it is created, and it contains other information as well. So at the right, you can see that this is the process kernel stack, and the structure thread struct is stored at the bottom. It is stored at the bottom because it has a fixed address, so that kernel efficiently access this thread structure, and with the help of thread structure the kernel can access the associated process, because thread and the process shares a lot of the data. So most of the time kernel uh, operate on that data, so it frequently access the actual process. So it makes very efficient way to access that process by kernel. Each process in the system is identified with the help of its ID. We call it a PID. It's type it P underscore T, and there is a variable PID max. It defines how many numbers of processes can be running simultaneously in a system. We can change this value at the boot time, and this value we can access with the help of this path. And there is problem of wraparound. When we run the process more than the PID max value, then the processes ID will repeat and it will start again with the one. So like if there are allowed only 1000 processes to run in a system and we run 1001 process, then 1001 process will get an ID of 1, and the one process already existing will be get destroyed. Kernel require current macro because it want to efficiently access the actual task which has created this thread. In x86 system, we achieve this current macro with the help of masking out 13 LSB bits of kernel stack pointer to get current thread info function, and then with the help of current thread info function we can access to the actual task. This is the way how we are masking the 13 LSB bits. If you calculate the decimal value of least 13 bits, then this will come to 1892, and we are storing this value into EAX register, and then we are ending this value with the stack pointer register. So now let's see where this process descriptor or task struct is stored in the kernel. So we will be seeing the implementation of the task descriptor in the Linux 5.9.6. So in this file, we have to search the task structure. So this is the structure. So here you can see it contains the thread infrastructure. It contains the state of the process variable. Here you can see the variable PID that contains the PID of the particular process. And this is the pointers to the parent of the process. And these are the list of children's and siblings of it of the process. And this is the pointer to the file systems associated with the process and the open files. And many more things. So you can explore this structure if you want to. Let's now visit the init process. This is the init task file. It contains the init process that execute as a first process at the time of booting. So let's see what it does. So we search task struct init task. So as you can see, this is the init process. Generally, it does many kind of initialization in the kernel. So you can see that it is initializing its stack, and it is initializing the memory. Also here you can see that it is initializing the file system, it is initializing files and signals and many other things. So this is the first process that runs in the system, and every process in the system is child of the init process. Its PID is 1. Process goes into different process states in its lifetime depending on the execution of the system. So when a process is created with the help of fork system call, it will first go into the ready queue here. When scheduler will schedule it onto a processor, then we will say that process is running. While process is running, it can either exit smoothly without any interruption, or it may need some IO data or some signal. Then it will go to the task interruptible or task uninterruptible state. So the task interruptible state is a state where process can be interrupted with the help of signals, but task interruptive uninterruptibles are the processes that cannot be interrupted with the help of signals, because these processes are doing some important task and they run for very small amount of time, so they won't allow signals to interrupt them. When the event is happened, then these processes go to the ready queue again, so that scheduler can schedule them again on the processor. Also, when process is running in the running state, then some higher priority process can come and it will preempt that process from the processor, and it will put again into the ready queue, and it will be go into the task running state again. So when some process is traced by another process, such as debugger with the help of ptrace, then we say that the process is in the state of ptraced, and process is in the state of pstop when process completes its execution and it is not running in the system. So process state can be set with the help of this function set task state. It takes the task and the state that we want to set, or we can set directly the task state with the help of this statement, and similarly we can do with this another function. Process context is not privileged context, but kernel context is a privileged context, because kernel has much more power. It can access any data and operate on any data. So when process want to execute something in the kernel space, then it execute exception or it calls a system call. So it goes into the kernel space. At that time, we say that the process is running in the kernel space, and kernel is running on the behalf of the process, because process is not allowed to run in the kernel space. So in the system, every process is child process of init process, and the PID of the init process is 1. Every process in the system has only one parent, and we can access that parent with the help of the parent variable. And these two functions are to iterate over the each process in the system in the forward direction, and this function is to iterate over the list in the backward direction with the help of previous variable. And this tasks variable is the task list. So as we have already discussed that task list is a doubly linked list. So it contains previous and next values. So we can iterate over the all the processes in the task list. Let's now discuss how these processes are created in the kernel. So these processes are created with the help of two system calls. One is fork system call and another is exec system call. Fork system call creates the exact copy of the parent process, and the newly created process is called as child process. And Linux has very interesting implementation of fork system call. It use very important concept called copy on write. So when it creates a child process, most of the resources are shared between the child process and the parent process. Until something is written, the data is shared between the child process and parent process. When something is written, then only it creates the separate copy for child process. So it is very optimized way of managing space in the kernel. So forking happen with the help of a clone system call, and this is the sequence that goes into the creation of a process. So fork system call internally calls the clone system call, and clone system call in turn call do fork, and do fork tries to copy the parent process and creates a child process, and then it starts child running. So there is a reason why we try to run the child process first. The reason is that if some child process is only running exec system call, then we don't need to create separate copies of data into the child process, because it is with the help of exec system call, it is trying to run in the different address space and totally different process. It is one of the optimization to save the resources. And vfork is a system call that is very similar to fork, except the page table entries of parent process are not copied, and the child process uh, run as a sole thread in the parent's address space, and parent is blocked until the child is running, and child is not allowed to write anything in the address space of the process. Let's see what is fork system call. So this is the syntax of fork system call. So it returns the PID of the child process. If it contains 4 lines of code, so when child is created, then where these copies will be exactly same, but child will start after the fork where from here, and process parent will also continue executing from here. So these two copies will be exactly same, and the return value, if it returns the negative value, then the child process is not created. If returns the 0, that means child process is created successfully, and currently child process is running in the system. If it is returned some positive value, that means it is returning the PID of the child process, but it is running the actual parent process. Child process will run at the later time. So here you can see that child process and the parent process are exactly same. That doesn't mean that they will run in the same sequence. It depends on the system, how it is being scheduled on the processor to run. So in the Linux kernel, there is no concept of thread. Linux implement all the threads as standard processes. So we can say that threads are the simply a manner of sharing resources between the processes that are lightweight. So this is the uh, clone system call that creates the threads. So here we try to pass different kind of flags which ensures that what kind of resources are shared between the process and the thread process. So here we can say that it is sharing the virtual memory, it is sharing the file system, it is sharing some files, and it is sharing the signal handler. And this is the example of clone where the normal fork system call calls. So here it is not uh, passing, or it is not sharing any resources with the process. So similar to the process threads, there are kernel threads. These kernel threads are created to accomplish the background task such as flush task or handling the interrupts. Similar to the process threads, these are also preemptible and schedulable. K threads are created by the other K threads or at the boot time, or we can also create them with the help of the clone system call. So let's now see the actual implementation in the kernel. So here we can search. So you can see here that this is the fork system call, and it calls to do fork as we discussed. So let's see what does it do. So this is the actual do fork function. So you can see that it here you can see that it is copying uh, the parent process as a child process, and then it is running it. So you can see that it is assigning PID to it, and then it is running it with the help of this function call. So this is the how fork system call work, and let's see the clone system call. So here you can see this is the different implementation of clone system call, and it has a variable called flags. So these are the flags that we pass in the clone system call. And here you can see the implementation. It copies the different flags and then it calls to the do fork function. Let's now visit the kernel threads. So here we can search. Thread, create. So this is the create k thread function. It creates the kernel threads. So here you can see that it is uh, passing some flags as we discussed, and it is doing some other task. And there are different functions like k-thread create on node. So let's discuss the exec system call. So exec system call, similar to fork, is used to create a new process, but this process runs in a different address space and it is not the exact copy of the parent. We can load a different program into that process. So these are the syntax of different system calls of exec family. So here you can see in exec VP, we are passing the character pointer of a file, and we are passing a argument list which is null terminated. And all these exec system calls does exactly the same thing, but we have different options to pass uh, different arguments to the system call. Here you can see that we are passing environment uh, argument. So it is used to specify the environment of executed program. Let's now see how we can terminate a process. So termination is generally self-induced and it occurs when we call exit system call or process normally returns from the main subroutine. Process can also terminate involuntarily because it receives some signals or exception that it can't handle or ignore. In that case, process can terminate itself involuntarily. So when exit system call is called, it internally calls do exit, and do exit tries to exit the different resources associated with that process. So it will exit the memory management, it will exit the semaphores associated with the process, it will exit files and file system, and it will delete any timers, and it will call exit notify, which tries to associate the children of that process that is exiting to assign the new parent to the child of the exited process, and it also puts the process in the zombie state. We will discuss more about it, and then it will calls the schedule function so that other process can be scheduled on the processor, and do exit function never returns. So when do exit completes its execution, then that process is completely not destroyed. It still exists in the uh, zombie state and it is not able to run. It contains kernel stack, it contains thread info structure and the task structure or task descriptor structure in the zombie state. So when a process exits, uh, kernel has responsibility to assign new parent to its children's. So first it tries to assign a new parent from the process group if any other processes are still existing. If it doesn't find any process in the process group, then it assign the init process as the parent of its child. So this is the sequence of function calls when do exit run. When do exit is run, it internally calls exit notify. In the exit notify, we will try to forget the original parent of the children's, and we will find the new parent with the help of this find a new reaper or find uh, child reaper function. After assigning the parent to the child processes of that particular exiting process, we call release task, and release task uh, internally calls exit signal, and exit signal calls unhash process. Here we remove the PID from the hash table of PIDs, and then we detach that PID so that it no longer exists in the task list. And then the release task also calls this function called put task structure. So ultimately it tries to remove the all these structure, kernel stack, page tables, and thread info structure and the task structure. So after calling this function, we can say that no data regarding that particular process exists in the system. Kernel maintains two child list of a particular process, the normal child list and the second is ptraced list. So it helps to assign the parent to the child process by just visiting the two small child list. Uh, Earlier it has to be find all the children from the all the processes. So it is very efficient method to find the children of exiting process. And the init process periodically runs a system called wait. So the wait system call tries to identify which processes are in the zombie state and it removes them from the zombie state and releases the all the associated resources with them. So wait system call makes a parent process to wait until child process exits. Let's discuss the exit system call. So this is the syntax of exit system call. It doesn't return anything and it takes a variable called status. So it gives the status of the exited process to the parent process. We will discuss the functioning of exit system call with the help of a simple implementation. So this is the wait system call. A child process can exit with the help of exit system call, or it normally returns from the main, or it receives some signals from the OS which tries to kill or terminate that process. So this is the syntax of wait system call. So it returns the PID of the process on which it is waiting, and it also returns the status of the uh, child process that has been exited. So the returned status of the process uh, can be checked with the help of these functions. So if this is true, then we say that children exited normally, and similarly these functions gives us the cause of the exit of the child process. Also, when multiple children are existing of a process, then this wait system call returns when any of the children is exited. So if we want to wait on a particular children, then there is separate wait system call. We call it wait PID. So we can give the PID of the particular child process and the status variable. So let's see the simple implementation of programs which illustrate the functioning of these system calls. So let's start with the implementation of the fork system call. So here you can see that I am invoking the fork system call, and as we have discussed that if it is returning -1, that means that child process is not created. If it returns 0, that means that child process has created successfully and child process start executing. If it is returns the positive value, that means that child process has created and currently it is not scheduled and it is currently running the parent process. So here this is the common code which the child process as well as the parent process will be running this print statement. So let's see its execution by running the program. So as you can see that here the child process created successfully and returned to parents. That means that child process was created and it is currently running the parent process, and it is saying that I am inside the parent, and after that it runs the common code. When the here we can say that parent has exited. When parent has exited, the child is scheduled, and it is saying that it is system call was successful and child process was created, and then it is saying that I am inside the child. And here again the common code is returned. Common code is printed because both of the parent and the child has the exactly same code. So let's see the example of exec system call. So here you can see that I am forking a child process. If it is returning the child 0, then that means it is running the child process. Within the child process, we are trying to execute this exec VP system call, which will load different program, and it will run in the different address space. So what program it is loading? So you can see that this is the program that it will load. In some seconds we will see what this different program does, and these are the different syntaxes of different exec family system calls, and all these system calls are doing the same task, but we have freedom to specify different arguments depending on the system call. Here in the parent we are doing just waiting for the child process to exit, and then when the child process will exit, then the parent process will run. In this example, as we can see that child process is jumping to the different address space, so it will exit and it will not run this print line. So let's now visit what the uh, what program we are loading in the exec system call. So here you can see that it is a totally new program, and it is just printing that your exec system call was successful and I am being printed in the exec program. So let's run our exec example. So I have already compiled that file. So let me directly run it. So here you can see that the first the child process is created and it is running in the parent. So inside parent we have declared a wait system call. So parent will wait for the child to execute first, then it will run. So here at this point the parent will stop and it will wait for child to execute. So you can see that the child has uh, start running here, and it is saying that I am inside child, and then it loads that program and it is printing that message. And after that exec system call, child has exited. So this line was in the parent process, and we are saying that child has exited. Now I am parent executing, and this is the common line. So you can see that this line is being printed only by the parent and only once, because child has already exited. So now let's see the example of the exit system call and the wait system call. So it is the same program, but I have modified a little bit. So you can see that it is just like the first program, but in the child process, what I am doing, I am trying to print that I am here calling the exec system call, and I am giving the return value 100. So this 100 value will return in the parent process, which is waiting for the child process to execute. So in this way, we can get the status of the uh, exit child process. So in the child process, you can see that I am waiting, and we are getting the status of the child process with the help of this status variable. So if, as we have discussed these different kind of functions, so here we can see the status of uh, the exited child process with the status variable, and we can print those values. So like I passed 100 as the exit signal. So we will print this signal 100 here in the this statement. So, and as usual, these are the common lines, and this is the brief description of what we have seen in the slide. So you can see each of it is just giving the status of the exited system, exited child process. So let's run it. So I have already compiled. So let me just run it. So as you can see that first the parent is running, and here the parent is waiting for the child process to run and exit. So now the child process has started execution. It is saying I am inside the child, and then now it is saying that I am calling exit system call. Then it calls the exit system call. When it calls exit system call, the child process will exit. Then the parent process will start execution, and it is saying that exited child process is something, some value that is returned by the system. Now I am parent executing, and this is the status or the signal that returned by the child process, that we returned, that we passed like 100. And then this is the statement that is common statement, and it is run by the parent process. So let's see the last slide. So in conclusion, we can say that we learned about the processes, its importance, and the relationship between threads and processes. We also see the life cycle of the process from its creation to exit. We learned the different system calls like fork, exit, and wait. So this is all for this video. I will see you in the next video.